Why did the silence feel heavier than the storm? The mountain had swallowed sound for 3 days. Snow hammered against the concrete walls of the abandoned weather station, rattling steel beams, burying windows, suffocating exits. Inside, 4 soldiers huddled against the cold, each breath a cloud, each heartbeat a metronome of survival. But Staff Sergeant Rachel Thompson couldn't shake the thought. The storm wasn't their only enemy. She'd been awake for 31 hours when her scope caught the first flicker of movement in the white void. For 3 days, nothing but shifting snow, the howl of the wind, and the numbness of waiting. But now, shadows against the blizzard, a dozen figures, camouflaged, methodical, closing in. Her blood chilled deeper than the Arctic air. Enemy forces, searching, hunting. The irony cut her like ice. They'd been trapped, starving, freezing, hopeless. Yet the storm had been their shield. And now, as the skis cleared, that shield crumbled. 3 days earlier, the mission had seemed routine. Insert, observe, extract. 72 hours in an overwatch position, eyes on a valley supply route, relaying enemy movement back to command. Standard operating procedure. She'd led missions like this before. She trusted her team. Marcus Chen, her calm-eyed corporal technical wizard, the one who could coax life from frozen circuits. Amanda Walsh, steady and fierce, sniper and medic, who'd patched Rachel's wounds in another war and never once let her down. And Rodriguez, David, the youngest, barely 21, sharp with logistics, eager to prove he wasn't just the kid carrying ammo. They'd all known the risks. They'd trained for bitter cold, high altitude, and silence, but no training could prepare for a storm like that. The blizzard struck 6 hours after insertion, a wall of wind and ice that shredded visibility, choked radios, and erased every path home. By hour 12, their communications were dead. By hour 20, their heating fuel was nearly gone. By hour 48, Rachel began to wonder not whether they'd complete the mission, but whether they'd live to see another sunrise. Supplies, she'd asked then, voice rough, masking worry. 6 days if we stretch, Rodriguez had replied, counting foil-wrapped ration packs with shaking fingers. Water's fine, snow's everywhere, but fuel, he didn't finish the sentence. 18 hours of heat, maybe. After that, survival meant bodies pressed together, conserving warmth, rotating watches with numb fingers on frozen triggers. Rachel remembered how Walsh looked at her then, steady, evaluating, but with something else in her eyes. Trust. Not blind, not naive. Trust forged in blood and ice, the kind that carried unspoken weight. Don't let us die here. Rachel carried that weight silently. Leaders didn't show cracks. Not here, not now. She'd forced them into routine. 2 hours on watch. 4 hours rest. Constant equipment checks, scraping ice from rifle bolts, breathing life into radios that refused to answer. It was discipline that kept fear at bay, discipline that kept them human in conditions that sought to strip humanity away. But inside, in the solitude of command, Rachel questioned everything. Had she chosen the right shelter? Had she prepared them enough for this? And the thought that bit deepest, if they froze, if they starved, if no extraction came, would anyone ever know how hard they'd fought? The storm didn't answer. It howled, it buried. By the third night, the world beyond their walls was gone. Visibility zero, wind chill lethal. They became shadows in a cave, trading stories in whispers to pretend time hadn't stopped. Rodriguez spoke of his mother's cooking back home. Chen muttered about a guitar he missed more than anything. Walsh didn't share much, only once saying, "If we get through this, I'm never complaining about summer heat again." Rachel didn't speak, she couldn't. Words felt fragile. Leadership demanded silence, control, a mask. She envied their honesty. And then, hour 73. The storm thinned. The wind eased. For the first time in days, light pierced the valley. Rachel raised her scope to the clearing snow and froze, figures, moving. 12 of them clad in white, weapons drawn, scanning ridgelines with military precision. Not random wanderers, not lost hunters. soldiers. She lowered the rifle, her pulse hammering in her ears. "They're not patrolling," Chen whispered, spotting alongside her. "They're searching." "For them." Rachel's stomach knotted. For 73 hours the storm had been their cage. But now, as freedom returned, so did the predators. She studied their formation, spaced, methodical, sweeping every natural observation post. And their path, it led straight to the weather station, straight to her team. They had maybe 20 minutes. Rodriguez tightened his jaw, checking magazines. "What do we do, Sarge?" What could she say? That 4 exhausted soldiers, half frozen, half starved, would now face 12 fresh enemy troops. That extraction was still impossible. That the radio crackled with nothing but static, their calls unheard. No, she swallowed those truths, locked them deep. "Instead, we wait." Walsh blinked. "Wait." Rachel nodded, calm on the surface. "We hold. They don't know exactly where we are. When they commit, when they're too close to run, we strike. Until then, we're ghosts." No one argued. Not because it was easy, but because it was her. Because Rachel Thompson didn't ask trust, she earned it. So they waited. Through the scope, Rachel tracked the patrol leader. He paused at 600 meters, binoculars scanning, calculating. One decision from him and the hunt would turn to assault. She steadied her breath, adjusting for wind, for temperature, for the contraction of metal that 3 days of cold had carved into her rifle. Walsh lined her sights on the comms man, whispering, "On your mark." The others tightened grips, ready but silent. Rachel exhaled, crosshairs finding the leader's chest. Time slowed. Storm's silence returned, thick and suffocating. And in that silence a thought came unbidden, sharp as ice. Sometimes survival isn't about hiding. Sometimes survival is about becoming the storm itself. Her finger brushed the trigger. The hunt was about to begin. Why does time feel heavier when you're about to break it? Rachel held her breath, crosshairs locked on the enemy leader's chest. The storm had been their cage, but now the cage door swung open. Outside waited 12 men trained to kill. Inside, only 4 of them remained, cold, starving, worn thin. One wrong shot, one mistake, and this weather station would turn from sanctuary to tomb. "On my mark," she whispered. Her voice was calm, too calm, like a mother reading a lullaby to children in the dark, yet every syllable carried weight. Marcus Chen steadied his spotting scope, lips pale from frostbite but steady with numbers. Amanda Walsh adjusted her cheek against cold steel, finger feathering her trigger. Rodriguez crouched by the window slit, rifle at the ready, not aiming yet, only watching Rachel's eyes for the cue. 600 meters. The enemy leader raised his binoculars. His movements were sharp, deliberate. He studied the structure. He studied them, though he didn't know it yet. Rachel exhaled. A storm of 3 days roared inside her chest. The trigger broke. The suppressed crack was almost nothing, a whisper swallowed by wind. Yet it ripped the world in half. The leader buckled, chest folding inward, binoculars falling into snow. His body crumpled without ceremony. And in the same heartbeat, Walsh's shot sang. The comms man fell, radio tumbling from his grasp, a lifeline severed. 2 down, 10 remained. For a second, silence lingered. No screams, no chaos, just confusion. The enemy froze, instincts clashing with disbelief. They didn't know where the shots came from, didn't know how many hunters hid in the storm's shadow. Rachel didn't give them time. Her second shot slammed into the soldier diving for cover, cutting him short mid-stride. Snow burst red. Then the valley ignited. The 10 survivors fanned out, disciplined, trained. Not amateurs. Their rifles barked sharp cracks, muzzle flashes stinging white against white. Bullets slapped concrete, splintered edges, sprayed grit across Rachel's cheek. "Contact left," Walsh barked, shifting position, her round dropping another man before his barrel found range. Rodriguez's weapon thundered short bursts, suppressive fire punching divots into snowdrifts where shadows tried to crawl closer. His face was hard now, not the boy Rachel once thought too young for this. Fear lived in his eyes, yes, but fear sharpened him. Chen, calm even under fire, called out coordinates, his voice steady as a metronome. 2, at bearing 160, range 400. 1 flanking right, closing fast. Rachel's breath synced with his rhythm. Numbers and wind, distance and angle. Her third shot cut the flanker before he closed. 7 left. But numbers didn't lie. They were still outnumbered, exhausted, freezing. And ammunition wasn't endless. The storm outside had died, but inside Rachel, a different storm raged. Each shot wasn't just survival. It was judgment. Judgment on whether they would leave this place alive. Judgment on whether she'd made the right call leading them here. Reloading, Walsh whispered, steady but tight. Rachel shifted position, chambering another round. Her gloves were stiff, fingers numb, but training guided them. Always training, always discipline. For a moment her mind drifted, a dangerous thing in combat. She saw her father's barn back home, snow drifts around the old fence. She was 10, bundled in a jacket too big for her. He told her then, snow isn't just cold, Rachel, it's weight. Learn to move under it or it buries you. Now she understood. The snow wasn't burying her body. It was burying her soul. Every pull of the trigger meant another life ended, another stone on her chest. She shook the thought off. Focus. Suppress right flank, she ordered. Rodriguez lit the slope, bullets chewing ice into mist. Through the cover, Rachel found another target crouching low. The man's rifle lifted, sighting toward Rodriguez. Rachel's round struck first, snapping him back, weapon tumbling. 6 left. The fight dragged, minutes stretched. Bullets bit stone, ricochets shrieked, snow hissed with blood. The weather station shook with echoes. Yet through it all, Rachel's team moved like clockwork, 4 parts of one desperate machine. Chen's voice never wavered. 5 remain, southeast depression, 200 out, 1 circling wide, no comms detected. That meant hope, no reinforcements yet, but hope was thin as ice. Rachel steadied for another shot. Her eyes burned, not from the cold. From the truth clawing inside her, they were winning, but at what cost? This wasn't just numbers. Each body in the snow had a name, a family, a story. She tried not to think about it, but sometimes war doesn't ask permission. It carves its truth into you whether you look or not. Her round cracked again. Another shadow fell, 5 left. Walsh whispered, ammo check, 6 rounds. Rodriguez, 4 mags half spent. Rachel, make them count. The enemy's discipline began to crack. Shots grew desperate, movements less coordinated. Fear had entered them, and fear in snow is fatal. 1 broke cover, sprinting. Walsh's round found him before his third stride. 4 left. But then silence, not storm silent, tactical silence. They've gone to ground, Chen murmured. Rachel's pulse tightened. Hidden enemies were worse than seen ones. Shadows in snow could wait hours, could crawl closer, could bleed you dry with patience. Minutes passed. The cold crept back in, sliding under their gear, biting fingers, fogging breaths. The firefight slowed, replaced by a waiting game. Rodriguez whispered, what if they're calling others? They're not, Chen replied, scanning frequencies. Radio silent. Either their comms died or we cut them clean. Rachel didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on her scope, scanning depressions, rocks, tree stumps half buried in snow. Every shape looked like a rifle, every shadow a threat. Inside, doubt gnawed. How long could they last? Ammunition dwindled, fuel gone, heat fatting. Even if they killed all 12, extraction wasn't guaranteed. Her jaw clenched. She remembered a night years ago, Afghanistan, pinned in a different valley. Her co-then, Captain Harris, had whispered in the dark, you don't fight for the mission when you're cornered, Rachel. You fight for the man next to you, for the breath you hear in the dark. Nothing else matters. She hadn't understood then, now she did. This fight wasn't for command, not for intelligence reports, not for some faceless strategy board back home. This fight was for Marcus, Amanda, David, for the three shadows breathing in the cold with her, for the only family war had left her. She steadied her scope. A shadow shifted. Patience broke. Another enemy rose to move, thinking the storm of bullets had ended. Rachel's round shattered that thought. 3 left. Movement east side, Chen hissed. Rodriguez fired. Shouts rose, cut short by Walsh's precision. 2 left. And then silence again. The 2 survivors had learned. They weren't moving. They were waiting just like Rachel. Minutes stretched into half an hour. The cold pressed harder. Their bodies ached. Rodriguez's teeth chattered. Walsh rubbed at her gloved hands to keep blood flowing. Chen blinked too slowly, exhaustion pulling at him. Rachel felt it too, the weight. The storm hadn't killed them, but maybe the waiting would. Finally, through the scope, she saw it. A faint shift, snow disturbed near the depression. Someone crawling, patient, silent. She aimed, but her finger froze, not from cold, from something else. The man wasn't aiming at them. He was dragging his comrade, a wounded soldier, arm limp, blood trailing in the snow. For one heartbeat, she saw not the enemy. She saw herself dragging Rodriguez or Walsh or Chen, the fragility of survival mirrored back at her. She could end it, one shot, clean, efficient. But in that moment, the rifle felt heavier than ever. What made them different? Uniforms, flags, or was it simply which side the storm had chosen to bury? Target, Walsh whispered, ready. Rachel's lips parted, the words stuck in her throat. Snow fell between her and the scope, blurring vision, softening edges. The world slowed again. And in that pause, she felt the truth pressing in. Survival wasn't about killing. It was about deciding what line you would not cross, even if death followed. Her breath fogged, her finger hovered. And for the first time in 73 hours, Rachel didn't know if pulling the trigger was the right choice. What makes a soldier pull the trigger? Is it training, instinct, survival, or is it something darker, a silence inside that convinces you the line has already been crossed? Rachel's finger hovered, cold and rigid against the trigger. The wounded enemy bled into the snow, his comrade dragging him through the drifts with a determination Rachel recognized all too well. For a heartbeat, she didn't see camouflage uniforms or rifles. She saw Marcus, or Amanda, or David. She saw her own team, broken and desperate, clawing against a world that didn't care whether they lived another minute. Her breath trembled, her rifle sight wavered. Target, Walsh's whisper cut through the stillness. Rachel couldn't answer, her throat closed. Snow fell between scope and target, the flakes lazy now, softening the sharp edges of war. In the quiet, every second stretched into eternity. The choice weighed more than the rifle itself. Finally, Rachel lowered the weapon. "No shot," she whispered. Walsh blinked, surprise flickering across her face, but she didn't question. Not here, not now. The 2 enemy soldiers vanished into the folds of the valley, shadows swallowed by white. The silence that followed wasn't relief, it was heavier. A silence that asked questions without answers. Rodriguez exhaled first. "So, what now?" His voice was thin, the voice of someone clinging to any anchor. Rachel didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on the snow. What now? The words echoed inside her skull. Had she just saved lives or doomed her own team? Mercy had no place in tactical manuals. Yet some part of her, the human part she fought to bury, whispered that sometimes survival wasn't about numbers. It was about dignity. But dignity didn't keep you alive when bullets flew. She shook her head. "We hold position, eyes out. They'll regroup or retreat. Either way, we don't move until we know." No one argued. Exhaustion kept questions buried. Minutes bled into an hour. The weather station was silent except for shallow breaths and the hiss of melting snow dripping through cracks. Ammunition lay scattered in magazines, rifles resting but ready. Rachel leaned back against the concrete wall, muscles trembling from more than cold. Her body screamed for sleep, but her mind wouldn't let her. Every time her eyelids lowered, she saw that soldier dragging his comrade. She heard her father's voice again, years ago, when she'd asked him what made a good hunter. Knowing when not to shoot, he'd said. The memory stung. She wasn't hunting deer, she was hunting men, and men hunted back. Temp dropping again, Chen murmured, breaking the silence. He checked the frost building on their radios, his fingers stiff but precise. If extraction doesn't come soon, we'll lose power again. Extraction will come, Rachel said. Her voice was steady, though the certainty inside her was brittle. Would it? The storm had grounded helicopters for 3 days, and even if skis cleared, command might not risk it again. 4 soldiers were statistics on a board, replaceable. She looked at her team. Chen, eyes red, still scanning frequencies that spat nothing but static. Walsh, tightening bandages on her hands, hiding tremors from frostbite. Rodriguez, staring too long at the floor, jaw clenched, a kid aging 10 years in 3 days. Replaceable? No, not to her. The sound came faint at first, a crack in the distance, then another. Not thunder, not ice, gunfire. Rachel's head snapped up. Contact, Walsh asked, already reaching for her rifle. Rachel raised her scope. The valley stretched wide, silent in patches, restless in others. Then she saw it, faint muzzle flashes in the distance, far beyond where the 2 survivors had disappeared. A different fight. Another patrol, reinforcements. Her stomach tightened. If the wounded had radioed before Walsh's shot, if they'd had backup nearby. We're not alone out here, Chen whispered, confirming her fear. His intercept equipment flickered to life, faint chatter bleeding through. Encrypted, broken, but urgent. Enemy units, coordinating. Rachel's pulse hammered. 12 had become 10. 10 had become 4, but 4 could become 20 at any moment. She forced her voice calm. Pack up non-essentials. We hold intel, weapons, ammo, everything else, burn it. Rodriguez hesitated. Burn here. Smoke or no smoke. We're not leaving anything they can use if we go down. His eyes widened at if. He wanted her to say when we get out. She couldn't. Minutes later, the weather station smelled of melted plastic, scorched paper, oil fumes. Flames licked quietly in a barrel, devouring what little comfort they had. The building felt emptier without it. They crouched in silence, each one listening to the distance, waiting. Walsh finally spoke, voice low but sharp. You should have taken that shot, Ratch. Rachel stiffened. I know. No, you don't. Walsh's eyes were hard, not cruel, not angry, hard with the weight of survival. We're alive because we've never hesitated. You hesitate, we die. Rachel swallowed. The words hit deeper than the cold. Walsh wasn't wrong, but she also wasn't right. The line between humanity and survival blurred out here, but Rachel knew if she crossed too many lines, she might not recognize herself when this was over. She didn't answer, not yet. The night crept in. Darkness came fast in the mountains, and with darkness, dread. Rachel assigned watches. She took first. Sleep clawed at her eyes, but she fought it, scanning through her scope, seeing nothing but shadows. Every rock was an enemy, every drift a corpse. Hours passed. Her breath fogged the glass. And then movement. Not distant this time, close, too close. Her chest seized. 3 figures crawling through snow, no more than 100 meters from the station. Not the same patrol, these were fresh. Faces painted, rifles slung, moving with the precision of predators. They weren't searching, they were coming. Rachel's whisper cut through the dark. Up, all of you now. Chen blinked awake, grabbing gear. Walsh rolled to position, rifle ready. Rodriguez jolted upright, panic flickering before training snapped him into place. Rachel didn't breathe. Her crosshairs tracked the lead soldier. But her mind wasn't steady this time. Mercy still weighed in her bones. If she pulled the trigger now, it meant war again. More bodies in snow, more silence afterward. If she didn't, it meant death. Her heartbeat thundered. This time there was no choice. She squeezed. The rifle whispered. The soldier fell. The other two froze. Walsh's shot cracked, cutting down the second. Rodriguez fired, spraying bursts that tore snow apart around the third. He fell screaming, silenced by a second round. Silence again, always silence after. Rodriguez's chest heaved. How many more? Chen checked his equipment, static filling his headset. At least one more unit in the valley. Maybe two. They're spread, but they're moving closer. Rachel clenched her jaw. The storm had kept them hidden. Now, with skis clearing, the valley had turned into a spotlight. They weren't hunters anymore. They were prey. She lowered her rifle, staring at the snow-stained ground outside. The storm hadn't killed them, but men would. Inside, a quiet truth broke through the noise. Mercy had its place, but mercy could not save them now. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned as she whispered. We fight until the sky comes for us, and if it doesn't, we don't leave this mountain. No one spoke, no one needed to. Because sometimes, survival isn't about hope. It's about refusing to let the storm or the enemy take your soul first. What keeps a soldier awake when the body begs for sleep? It isn't discipline. It isn't caffeine. Out here on the ridge between life and death, it's something simpler. Fear. The fear that if you close your eyes, the world will decide you don't get to open them again. Rachel hadn't slept in almost 4 days. Her eyelids burned. Her chest felt hollow. Her skin itched from frostbite and her fingers trembled even when wrapped around her rifle. Yet she forced herself still. A statue with a pulse, because statues don't fall asleep. Snow whispered across the valley. The storm had moved on, but its ghost remained, thin winds threading through broken concrete, rattling in cracks, carrying faint echoes from somewhere far below. Marcus Chen sat beside her, headset clamped tight, his breath fogging the mic as he cycled through static. His lips moved silently, whispering prayers in Mandarin under his breath. Rachel didn't ask what he said. She respected prayers too much to make them small by questioning. Behind them, Rodriguez dozed in a corner, chin tucked against his rifle, every shiver jerking him awake again. Walsh paced. Not wide steps, just 2 strides forward, 2 back. A caged lion, hands flexing, jaw tight. Rachel had seen that look before, the look of a soldier not afraid to fight, but afraid of waiting to fight. The waiting was worse than the battle. Nothing, Rachel asked Chen softly. He shook his head. Brief bursts on encrypted channels, same frequency. They're talking, but I can't break it. Could be chatter, could be coordinates. His eyes flicked toward her. They know we're here. Rachel already knew. You could feel it when the air shifted, when the silence wasn't natural anymore. The mountain itself seemed to hold its breath. She pulled her scope to her eye again. Shadows stretched long across the valley floor. The sun dipped behind ridges, carving the snow into jagged relief. Beauty, Rachel thought absently, how the cold could paint such cruel perfection. And then movement. She froze, just a flicker at first. Then another. Figures. Not a dozen this time, but more. She counted 6, maybe 7, advancing in staggered intervals, their white parkas blending perfectly with snow. She whispered, contact, south approach, 7, maybe more. Walsh was at her side in seconds. Permission to fire. Rachel hesitated. The question twisted her gut. She remembered her hesitation earlier, remembered Walsh's hard words. You hesitate, we die. But this was different. They were too far still, not yet committed. Hold, she said, steady. Walsh's jaw clenched, but she obeyed. The figures moved with discipline. This wasn't random search anymore. This was a push, deliberate, coordinated. And Rachel's heart sank with the realization. The 2 she had spared had lived long enough to call reinforcements. Mercy had echoed into the valley, and now it returned with rifles. The thought pierced her chest. Had she doomed them all with one choice? She clenched her jaw. No time for that, not now. Rodriguez, she called. The kid stirred, blinking sleep from his eyes. Prep fallback positions. East wall first, then tunnels, move. He nodded, scrambling up, too tired to argue, too young to hide his fear. Chen, keep scanning. If they talk, I want to know. He tapped his headset, already on it. Walsh's hand tightened on her rifle. Say the word, Ratch. Rachel kept her scope steady. Her breath fogged the glass. Through it she tracked the approaching patrol. 7 shadows, slow, careful. They'd learned from the last unit. Her mind fractured. Half focused on the field, wind, distance, angles. The other half somewhere else entirely. Years ago, Afghanistan. A village. A boy no older than Rodriguez dragging his sister through rubble while her team cleared a compound. Rachel had sighted in, finger on the trigger, command yelling in her ear. She'd hesitated then, too. Watched the boy vanish into dust. 2 weeks later, that same boy's fingerprints showed up on an IED. 2 Marines gone. She had carried that ghost for years. And now, another ghost dragged a comrade through snow. And because she hadn't fired, the valley was filling with more guns. The scope trembled, her finger itched. She wanted to believe she'd done the right thing. She wanted to believe mercy had meaning, but mercy had no place in war. Rachel, Walsh whispered, a plea. Rachel's lips moved, barely a breath. Not yet. The 7 figures crept closer. Minutes crawled, shadows stretched longer. The sun bled red along the ridges, painting the snow like old wounds. And then the silence shattered. A burst of gunfire cracked from below, sharp, deliberate, not aimed at them, suppressive, probing, testing. Walsh cursed under her breath. They're pushing us. Rachel's heart pounded. This wasn't a search anymore. This was an assault. Positions, she ordered. The team moved. Smooth, drilled, automatic. Rodriguez manned the east flank, crouched behind sandbags buried in ice. Walsh took the west, steady, rifle poised. Chen stayed at the comms, whispering coordinates, his calm voice the thread holding them together. Rachel centered herself behind her rifle. The storm had left her hollow, but in that hollow there was still a rhythm. Inhale, exhale, trigger. The first enemy broke cover, rushing low. Rachel's round cut him down. The fight began again. Gunfire roared across the valley, echoing like thunder. Bullets pinged concrete, spraying shards. The weather station shook with each impact. Rodriguez fired bursts, teeth gritted, voice cracking as he shouted contact reports. Walsh's rifle sang with precision. Each shot a scalpel, cutting enemies before they reached cover. Chen fed them numbers, distances, bearings, his tone eerily calm against the chaos. Rachel's world shrank to the scope. Shadows rose, shadows fell. Snow erupted in crimson bursts. Her body moved faster than thought, the rifle an extension of her soul. Yet through it all, a fracture deepened inside her. Each shot reminded her of mercy denied, mercy granted, ghosts multiplying. Would sparing those men haunt her more than killing them? Or was it the opposite? She didn't know anymore. The fight dragged. Minutes, hours. Time was nothing but bullets and breaths. At last, silence again. The valley stilled. Bodies lay half buried in snow. The sun had vanished completely now, leaving only moonlight, a pale, merciless glow across the battlefield. Rodriguez slumped against the wall, chest heaving. Clear. Chen shook his head. For now, but chatter increasing, they'll be back stronger. Rachel's chest tightened. They were being bled, piece by piece. She closed her eyes just for a second. Behind her eyelids the ghosts crowded. The boy in Afghanistan, the soldier in snow, the lives taken, the lives spared. And through it all, one truth pulsed. Survival wasn't the victory. The victory was choosing who you became while you survived. Her eyes opened, hard, cold, determined. "We hold," she whispered. "No matter what comes, we hold." The others nodded, though fear lingered in their eyes. Because in the end, the storm had never left. It was inside them now. And the mountain would decide who it buried. What does hope sound like in the middle of despair? Not a trumpet, not a cheer, not a rescue siren. Hope sounds like static breaking just for a heartbeat into something human. Rachel froze when she heard it. Chen's headset crackled. His lips parted, eyes wide for the first time in days. "Say again," he whispered into the mic. The voice was faint, shredded by distance, but it was there, real. Rachel's chest clenched so hard it hurt. "Extraction window opening," the broken voice said. "Repeat, extraction window in." Then silence again. The words echoed in her skull, extraction window. Her throat went dry. 3 days of storm, 3 days of isolation, 3 days of silence, and now, for the first time, the sky had spoken. But before her chest could swell with relief, the mountain answered differently. Gunfire sharp, heavy, closer than before. The valley lit with muzzle flashes. Shadows surged again, dozens this time. Not a probing patrol, not scattered hunters. This was organized, coordinated, an assault. Multiple contacts, Chen shouted, dropping his headset and grabbing his rifle. Rachel pressed her eye to the scope. Her heart dropped. She counted not 7, not 12, closer to 20. 2 squads at least sweeping the ridges, converging on their position. The storm had shielded them. Now, with skis cleared, they were exposed. "Positions," she barked, her voice hoarse but sharp. Walsh was already moving, teeth clenched, her rifle steady. Rodriguez scrambled, fear in his eyes but fire in his chest, slamming another mag into his weapon. Chen cursed under his breath, grabbing cover at the north wall. Rachel steadied her breathing. Her fingers trembled, but her will locked them still. The weather station wasn't shelter anymore. It was a trap, and every trap had 2 choices: break the enemy inside it or be broken. The assault hit hard. Bullets cracked against concrete, sparks showering the room. Ricochets screamed. Snow erupted outside like white smoke bombs. The air turned into a storm of metal. "Left flank moving," Walsh yelled, firing. Her round dropped one, then another, but the enemy pressed harder, closing fast. Rodriguez fired short bursts, his voice breaking between curses and prayers. His bullets chewed snow, cut shadows, but there were too many. Chen, calm as always, called bearings between shots. 3 at 120. 4 more 200 meters, moving to cover. 2 flanking right. Rachel's rifle whispered death. 1 shot, then another. 2 men dropped, but still they came. Her scope blurred with sweat and fog, her gloves stiff, her bones screaming. This wasn't a skirmish anymore. This was survival against a wave. Minutes bled into eternity. The weather station shook. The floor trembled under concussive blasts as grenades popped against outer walls, shrapnel shredding stone. Dust choked their lungs. Rodriguez screamed, not in pain, rage. His young face twisted, teeth bared, as he emptied half a mag into a rushing figure, cutting him down before he could breach the east entrance. Walsh grunted, her voice tight with effort. "We can't hold forever, Ratch." Rachel's jaw locked. She couldn't show doubt, not now. "Forever's not the plan," she said. Her voice broke like steel. Because somewhere in that broken static was a promise, extraction, maybe minutes away, maybe an hour, but hope existed now, and hope demanded they hold. Her scope snapped to a new figure, sprinting with something clutched in hand. A grenade. Rachel fired. The man folded, snow exploding with the fall. Chen shouted numbers, calm even as bullets tore inches from his head. 2 down, southeast ridge, more behind. Rachel's rounds cut them down, one after another. Precision, discipline. Her body screamed with exhaustion, but her training carried her. And yet through it all, guilt stabbed her. She saw that wounded man again, the one she had spared. She saw his comrade dragging him through snow. Was it his voice that had called this storm of men? Had her mercy bought her team's destruction? Her finger trembled against the trigger. She fired anyway. The valley turned into a graveyard of snow and blood, but still, shadows crawled. A bullet slammed against the concrete near Rodriguez, spraying shards into his cheek. He cried out, blood streaking red against pale skin. Rachel's chest seized. For one heartbeat the battle blurred. All she saw was him, young, scared, bleeding, her responsibility, her kid. "Rodriguez, fall back," she barked. "No," he shouted back, eyes blazing through blood. "I'm not leaving you." A shadow rose behind him. Rachel fired, the round snapping past his ear, cutting the enemy down mid-stride. "Now," she roared. He stumbled back, obeying, eyes wide, chest heaving. Walsh caught Rachel's gaze. Her eyes said everything, "We won't last." Rachel swallowed hard. She knew. But still she said, "We hold." The words felt like stone in her mouth, but they were all she had. Minutes passed, then another crackle through Chen's headset, louder this time. "Frost 7 Alpha, this is Eagle 6-4. Do you copy?" Chen's eyes went wide. He ripped the mic up. "Copy, Eagle 6-4. Frost 7 Alpha, status green, enemy contact heavy. Immediate extraction requested." Rachel's chest pounded. It was real, not a ghost, not a dream, real. The pilot's voice came back through static, broken but clear enough. "Ida, 30 minutes. Hold position." 30 minutes. Rachel's throat closed. 30 minutes might as well be 30 years under this assault. Walsh spat, eyes wild. "We don't have 30 minutes. Rachel steadied her scope, her breath fogging the glass. "Then we make them count." She fired again. Another shadow fell. The mountain roared with war, bullets, screams, snow exploding into mist. The storm hadn't ended, it had only changed shape. And inside the weather station, 4 souls clung to the edge of survival, praying the sky would keep its promise. But Rachel knew the truth. Hope was dangerous. Because sometimes hope didn't arrive in time. How long can 30 minutes last? To Rachel, it felt like forever. A forever measured in bullets, in breaths, in the thunder of boots approaching through snow. The radio had given them hope. 30 minutes until extraction. 30 minutes until the sound of rotors. 30 minutes until sky and steel carried them off this mountain. But 30 minutes under fire is eternity. The enemy knew time, too. They weren't patient anymore. This wasn't a probe. This was fury. They wanted the station buried before the sky could come. The first wave hit like an avalanche. Gunfire shredded the night, bullets screaming through shattered windows, sparking off stone. Shadows rushed, rifles flashing, grenades arcing. The weather station shook with every blast, the walls bleeding dust and snow. Rachel's rifle cracked back answers. 1 shot, 2, 3, each whisper sending a shadow into silence. Walsh worked alongside her, steady as stone, every trigger squeeze precise, deliberate, merciless. Rodriguez shouted through the noise, his weapon coughing bursts. The kid's voice was raw, half terror, half rage. Each burst came with a curse, a prayer, a promise that he wasn't going to die here. Chen, calm as ever, fed bearings between shots. North ridge, flankers right, 2 more closing on east. His headset dangled, forgotten. There was no more time for signals. Survival was here now at the barrel of their rifles. The enemy pressed harder. Grenades exploded against the walls, showering them with fragments. Dust filled lungs, stung eyes. The air reeked of gunpowder and fear. Rachel's body screamed. Her fingers were raw, stiff, bleeding. Her eyes blurred from exhaustion. Yet every time her rifle whispered, another shadow fell. But shadows kept coming. The fight blurred into something primal. There were no tactics now, no formations, just survival, bullets, blood, snow. Then Rodriguez cried out. Rachel's head snapped. He staggered back from the east wall, his arm clutched tight, blood seeping through his jacket. Hit, he gasped, collapsing against cover. Rachel's heart clenched. For a second the battle blurred. She saw him not as a soldier, but as a boy who had never finished college, who had a mother waiting states away, who had laughed about her terrible coffee just 3 days ago. Walsh was already there, pressing bandages, her hands firm but trembling. Through and through, he's still with us, she barked, but her eyes flicked to Rachel, silent with a harder truth. Not for long if this keeps up. Rachel forced her scope back up. She couldn't break. Not now, not while they still had minutes to hold. Her rifle spoke again, and again. But inside, guilt carved deeper. She thought of that soldier she had spared, the one dragging his comrade. Was this Rodriguez's blood the cost of her mercy? Had she brought this storm on them all? Her throat burned. She whispered words no one heard. "Don't you die on me, kid." The fight raged. Minutes blurred. Shadows fell, others rose. Walsh fired until her rifle clicked dry, then slammed in another mag with bloody hands. Chen fired short bursts, his calm broken now by sweat, his prayers louder, sharper. Rachel held the line, shot after shot, breath after breath, her shoulder bruised, her chest tight, her will thinning. And then a blast shook the east wall. Concrete cracked, stone splitting. Snow and smoke poured in. Figures surged through the breach. Too close, too fast. Rodriguez raised his weapon one-handed, firing wild, cutting one down before his rifle clicked empty. He grabbed for another mag, but his hand shook too much, blood slicking the metal. Walsh shoved him back, stepping into the breach. Her rifle barked, two more shadows falling. She shouted over her shoulder, "I've got this." Rachel's heart seized. "No," she roared. But Walsh didn't turn. Her stance was steady, her fire relentless. She was a wall of steel. Until a round caught her in the chest. She staggered, blood spraying. For one heartbeat she stood, defiant, her rifle still spitting fire. Then she crumpled into the snow-filled breach. "Walsh!" Rodriguez screamed, voice breaking. Rachel's chest tore open in silence. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her scope wavered as her best friend, her medic, her anchor, lay still. The enemy pressed harder. Shadows surged past Walsh's body, breaching the room. Rachel's rifle snapped up. Her shot cut one, then another. Chen fired wild, curses spilling. Rodriguez, bleeding and sobbing, dragged his weapon up again, spitting rounds through tears. The station was no longer a fortress. It was ruins. And still they held. Rachel fired until her magazine clicked empty. She reloaded with shaking hands, each second too slow. She screamed, a raw sound, half rage, half grief, as she cut down another shadow. But for every enemy that fell, another came. 5 minutes, Chen shouted over the roar, his voice cracked. Extraction in 5. 5 minutes. 5 more minutes in hell. Rachel's vision blurred with tears she didn't remember shedding. She saw Walsh again, laughing by a campfire months ago, mocking her for burning rations. She saw her father teaching her to aim at cans on the fence, telling her, "Don't miss what matters." And she saw Rodriguez bleeding, Chen still fighting, both trusting her even now. Her throat burned as she whispered to herself, "We're not dying here." She rose higher over her rifle, exposing herself, firing faster, harder, with a fury that silenced thought. Shadows dropped in waves. Her shoulder bled from shrapnel. Her cheek burned where stone had cut. Still she fired. Chen shouted bearings until his voice went hoarse. Rodriguez fired through pain, his eyes blazing, refusing to quit even as blood drenched his sleeve. The last minute stretched forever. The enemy faltered. Their surge slowed, broken bodies littering snow. Fear crept into them now. Fear of 4 soldiers who refused to fall. Rachel saw it, she felt it, their hesitation, their disbelief. And in that moment she realized something. Maybe mercy hadn't doomed them after all. Maybe it had given her the strength to see enemies not as faceless shadows, but as fragile men. Men who bled, men who feared. Men who could break. Her final shots were steady, clean, measured, until silence returned. Rachel's ears rang, her chest heaved, smoke and dust choked the air, shadows no longer moved outside. Chen whispered hoarse, clear. Rodriguez sobbed, clutching his arm, his eyes on Walsh's still form. Rachel's hands trembled. She lowered her rifle, staring at the bodies in the snow. Her own hands looked foreign, red, cracked, broken. And then faint at first, but real, the thump of rotors. The sky was coming. What does salvation sound like? Not silence, not gunfire. It sounds like rotors, distant but growing. The thump-thump-thump carried over the valley, faint at first, swallowed by the mountain's jagged walls. But Rachel heard it. Chen heard it. Even Rodriguez, bleeding and pale, lifted his head with wide, desperate eyes. The sky was coming for them. But so was the enemy. From the ridges, fresh shadows moved. Not many, a final handful, but enough to finish the job. They weren't retreating. They were desperate too. Desperate to deny 4 American soldiers their escape. "Contact West Ridge," Chen barked, his voice hoarse from shouting bearings for hours. Rachel raised her scope. 3 figures crept along the rocks, rifles steady. Behind them, 2 more sprinted low, trying to close distance. 5. It might as well have been 50. Her rifle cracked. 1 shadow fell. Walsh's empty firing position flickered in her mind, a ghost. Rachel blinked it away. She couldn't see ghosts now. She had enough of the living to hold on to. Rodriguez fired from his corner, his shots uneven, wild, but one connected. A figure stumbled, rolled down the ridge, vanishing into snow. 4 left. The rotors grew louder. The sound was salvation, but it was also danger. Helicopters couldn't land in hot zones. The bird would circle until they had space, which meant they had to clear the field themselves. Rachel's jaw tightened. They had minutes, maybe less. "Chen," she rasped, "signal the bird, flares now." Chen scrambled to the emergency kit, fingers numb, pulling the flare gun free. He raised it, fired. A streak of red arced into the night, hissing, painting the sky with desperate light. The rotors shifted, closer now, sweeping low. The mountain trembled with the sound. The enemy saw it too, and they surged. Gunfire ripped again, bullets chewing into stone. The weather station groaned under the assault. Rachel fired, her shot snapping through another soldier's chest. 3 left. But then Rodriguez cried out again. His rifle clattered from his hands. A round had caught his side, slicing across his ribs. He collapsed, clutching his chest, gasping. Rachel's heart wrenched. She wanted to crawl to him, to press her hands over his wound, to whisper that he wasn't going to die. But she couldn't. Not now, not yet. Her rifle lifted again. Another shot. Another shadow fell, 2 left. Chen fired bursts, his calm finally breaking into raw shouts. His bullets chewed stone, sparks flaring, forcing the last 2 into cover. The rotors thundered overhead. The helicopter loomed now, its searchlight cutting across the valley, a blazing beam that turned night into white. The pilot's voice crackled in Rachel's ear through Chen's headset. "Frost 7 Alpha, this is Eagle 6-4. We have you visual, area hot, clear perimeter for extraction." Rachel pressed the mic, her voice raw but steady. "Copy, holding." She lowered it. Her eyes met Chen's. His face was pale, streaked with grime, but his nod was firm. He understood. They had to finish it. She steadied her scope again. The 2 survivors shifted in their cover, trying to flank, trying to delay just long enough for the extraction bird to pull away. Rachel's finger hovered. She hesitated. And for one heartbeat she saw them differently, not as shadows, as men. Cold, tired, desperate, just like her, fighting not for victory but for survival. She thought of the one she'd spared, thought of Walsh bleeding in the snow, thought of Rodriguez gasping behind her. The storm had taken so much already. Could she really carry another ghost? Her hand trembled. Rachel, Chen shouted, now. Her jaw clenched, her finger pulled. The rifle whispered, one fell. Chen's burst cut the other. Silence. Real silence. Not storm silence, not tactical silence, true silence. The valley lay still, bodies half buried in snow, smoke rising from craters. The only sound the rotors above, loud, insistent, undeniable. Rachel's chest collapsed inward. Her rifle slipped from her hands. Clear, Chen said, voice shaking. Perimeter clear. The helicopter swept down, its searchlight blazing over the ruins of the weather station. Snow whipped into a frenzy under its blades. The side door slid open, crew shouting, ropes dropping. Rachel staggered to Rodriguez. He was pale, lips blue, but alive, barely. She pressed her hand against his wound, whispering through clenched teeth, "Stay with me, kid, stay with me." Chen grabbed the boy's other arm, hauling him upright. Together, they dragged him toward the ropes, snow stinging their faces. The crew shouted, reaching down, pulling Rodriguez up, then Chen. Rachel hesitated. She turned, looked back. Walsh lay in the breach, snow already covering her. The mountain was burying her as it buried everything. Rachel's throat burned, her vision blurred. She wanted to run to her, to carry her body, to defy the storm, but she couldn't. Not this time. Her legs shook, her fists clenched. And she whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry." The crew's voice broke through the roar, "Staff Sergeant now." Rachel forced herself forward. She grabbed the rope, climbed, her body screaming, her soul heavier than it had ever been. The bird lifted. The valley dropped away, shrinking beneath them. Snow, blood, ghosts. Rachel pressed her head against the metal wall, breath ragged. Chen sat across from her, holding Rodriguez's head steady, shouting for medics. The crew chief clapped Rachel's shoulder, shouting something she didn't hear. All she heard was the storm inside her. Because survival wasn't victory. It was just another silence. Why does silence feel heavier after the gunfire ends? The helicopter roared through the night, carrying 3 broken soldiers away from the mountain. Yet inside its steel belly there was no triumph, no cheers, just breathing, shallow, ragged, and silence so loud it hurt. Rachel sat hunched against the wall, her rifle still clutched in hands that wouldn't let go. Blood, hers, Rodriguez's, Walsh's, the enemy's, stained her gloves. It felt baked into her skin, like no amount of washing would ever scrub it away. Across from her, Chen held Rodriguez upright, his hands pressed against gauze that was already soaked through. Rodriguez's eyes fluttered open and shut, lips moving in whispers Rachel couldn't hear over the rotors. She didn't need to hear. She knew. He was speaking to someone far away, his mother maybe, or to himself, or to God. The crew chief leaned over, shouting something about vitals, about ETA to base, about medics standing by. But Rachel barely registered. Her eyes drifted back to the door, to the valley shrinking below them. Snow, shadows, blood buried beneath white. And Walsh. Rachel's throat closed. She pressed her fist against her mouth, holding back a sound that wanted to tear free, grief, guilt, rage, she couldn't tell. Walsh should have been here. She should have been sitting in this helicopter, rolling her eyes at the crew chief, checking Rodriguez's bandages with steady hands. She should have been alive. But she was. And Rachel had left her there. The thought hammered inside her skull. I left her. I walked away. The helicopter jolted, banking. Rachel shut her eyes tight, willing the memory away. But it stayed. Walsh's body in the breach, snow falling over her like a shroud. The silence roared louder. Base came too quickly. The helicopter slammed onto the pad, medics rushing aboard. Hands pulled Rodriguez away, strapping him to a stretcher, shouting vitals. Chen followed, stumbling but steady, still whispering prayers. Rachel stayed seated. Her body wouldn't move. "Staff Sergeant," a voice barked. A major crisp uniform, urgency in his eyes. "Status report." Rachel blinked at him, her lips parted, no words came. The major frowned, then softened. He nodded once. Later. They guided her off the bird, her boots hitting the tarmac like stone. Lights blazed across the pad, too bright after days of storm dark. The air was warmer here, but she still shivered. Inside the medical tent, chaos. Rodriguez vanished behind curtains, doctors shouting. Chen collapsed onto a cot, his hands trembling uncontrollably now that he was safe enough to feel. And Rachel stood in the middle of it, helmet under one arm, rifle under the other, hollow. A young medic approached, clipboard ready. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Rachel blinked. She didn't know, she couldn't feel. She shook her head. The medic hesitated, then moved on. She wandered to the edge of the tent, leaned against a post. Her eyes stared at nothing. Her ears heard only the mountain, still roaring inside her. The debrief came hours later. Commanders sat across a table, clean uniforms, polished boots, pens scratching on paper. They asked questions. What was the mission timeline? How many contacts? What intelligence recovered? Rachel answered. Her voice was steady, professional, a soldier's voice. She told them about the storm, the radio blackout, the patrol, the siege. She told them about the kill counts, the bearings, the equipment. She did not tell them about mercy, about sparing a man who dragged his comrade through snow, about watching Walsh fall, about hearing Rodriguez whisper his mother's name as blood leaked through her hands. Those truths stayed buried, like the mountain. The commanders nodded, they wrote. At the end, one said, "Outstanding work, Staff Sergeant. Under impossible conditions, you maintained the mission. You brought back intelligence that may save lives, and you brought back your team." Rachel's chest tightened, not all of them. She didn't say it, she saluted. 6 weeks later, the ceremony. Dress uniforms, medals pinned, cameras flashing, words like bravery, valor, sacrifice filling the air. Chen received his commendation, pale but proud, his hand still trembling when the ribbon touched his chest. Rodriguez sat in a wheelchair, arm bandaged, smiling weakly as the general pinned his bronze star. And Rachel stood at attention as the citation was read. Her name echoed in the auditorium. Her bronze star gleamed under the lights. Applause thundered. She didn't hear it. Her eyes drifted to the empty chair at the end of the row. Walsh's chair. A medal rested there, framed in velvet, posthumous. The applause felt hollow. Rachel's fingers tightened at her side. She forced herself to breathe, to stand, to salute when ordered. But inside she whispered to Walsh, "This medal isn't yours. It isn't mine. It belongs to the mountain." That night, alone in her quarters, Rachel sat on her bunk with the medal in her lap. The medal was cold, heavy. It didn't shine, not to her. She thought of the storm, of snow-sealing windows, of body heat shared in the dark, of Rodriguez's laughter, Chen's prayers, Walsh's steady eyes. She thought of mercy, of sparing a man who may have brought death to her door. And she thought of survival. Survival wasn't triumph. It was debt. A debt you carried long after the gunfire ended. Rachel stood, crossed to the window. Outside, snow drifted across the base, soft under floodlights. She opened her hand. The medal gleamed once, then lay still on the desk. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried weight. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She turned from the window, leaving the medal behind. Because the storm would never leave her. But neither would the silence she chose to keep.